are being joined by George Melashvili, I'm sorry, sir, from the Europe-Georgia Institute. Delighted to have you with us. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome to TVP World, and let me begin by asking a fairly general question. How do you think these protests are likely to end? Because they obviously bring back the memories of what happened in Ukraine, what resulted with the Yanukovych government being ousted. But also, unfortunately, we remember Belarus, and in Belarus the protests were quite intense. There were even casualties. And unfortunately, as time went by, the administration of Alexander Lukashenko has managed to crack down on these protests, and, well, nothing came out of it. I mean, nothing tangible, at least. Obviously, the spirit of freedom lives on, but Belarus has not changed. Which of these two options is more likely to actually become reality in the end?
Well, we also should not forget about the 2003, when Georgians already had a rose revolution against the same kind of government, which was Eduard Shevardnadze. So we do have experience with such things. I'm not exactly sure that it is exactly the scenario that we shall be witnessing right now. We have elections in October, and we also have a lot of fighting, which is going on right now in the streets of Tbilisi. The most important highway of Tbilisi, the Hero Square, is being locked down right now by the protesters, and the columns are moving towards Rustaveli Avenue again. We had very emotional images from the Opera House right now, when the protesters were chanting "No to the Russian law" after Beethoven's musical part. So we are witnessing that there is a lot of battles and fighting going on right now. It's not only about the fights in the streets, it's also about the souls and spirits and hearts of the people. And right now, just a few moments ago, we had the endorsements against the Russian law from the national football team, the people who brought immense joy to the vast majority of Georgians just a few days ago. So the fight is on. The Georgians, in our vast majority, were against this law, and we are demonstrating it again and again and again. We are not getting tired. The strategy of the Georgian government seems to be an assumption that these protests will just wind down, the people will get tired, etc. It's not happening. The protests are getting bigger and bigger. I'm getting actually tired of telling to my friends that this was the biggest protest in Georgian history, because every week, every day, we have bigger and bigger protests. The cities in the regions, Batumi, Kutaisi, Zugridi, are joining the protests. We're witnessing people who are self-organizing and coming to the capital city. One of the biggest crowdfunding platforms has been created to support the people who are coming to the capital city from the regions. And there is a very big, drastic contrast to what we're seeing from the ruling party, which is busing people, forcing people working for the government to come to Tbilisi. And what we witnessed just a few days ago, the statement by Bezina Ivanishvili, the chairman of the Georgian Dream Party, who backed anti-Western policies and threatened repressions against both the opposition and the civil society. However, as I have already told you, the spirit is going on. We are witnessing unprecedented resistance against this law. All parts of the Georgian society, whether they're musicians, whether they're footballers, whether they're just people, general public, the resistance is going on, and only time will show us which scenario will go on. We're sure and we're hoping that the Georgian government, even with the anti-Western turns that it is having right now, will not dare to go against the will of the people, and they will finally be forced to repel this law and return Georgia to the European path.
Right, and of course they wouldn't want to alienate themselves completely on the international scene, I believe. Ursula von der Leyen also has expressed her great concern and condemned the violence. But what I wanted to ask you about, according to a global freedom score, Freedom House, Georgia is a free country in sort of 58%. It's 58 out of 100. And you've mentioned the elections coming up in October. So my question is, if the protesters won't be able to stop what's happening right now, is it possible that the situation will be overturned once following the elections?
Well, it is possible. However, right now, the main aim is to ensure that this law and the anti-Western anti-democratic turns that the ruling party is having now will be stopped by the civil society, by the protesters, by the opposition political parties. If this does not happen right now, it will be very difficult to do anything before the election, because civil society will be almost decapitated, will be strangled by this very repressive draconian laws that the Georgian Dream is planning to have. It will be very difficult to observe elections because most of the observation is being done by independent civil society organizations. And one of the aims of this law is specifically to strangle us and not to allow us to observe the elections. So it will be complicated, but again, we are fighting this law right now. There is a veto procedure which will be happening by the president of Georgia, and then the parliament, the Georgian, or actually Russian Dream Party, will have to fight presidential veto as well. And they will be met and greeted by the people in the streets who will be protesting peacefully and demonstrating our willingness.
And do you think that the rhetoric is really escalating on the part of the government? I mean, Melashvili, who is not actually... he doesn't have any official function right now, but he is the unofficial honorary leader of the Georgian Dream Party, which, of course, the name itself is something of a misnomer there, right?
Right. He's also supported by Russia, right?
No, he
and
certainly
this is where
is.
he made his money.
He made his career there. So he most recently has actually spoken out against the West, because before that, it did seem that you've actually had some sort of facade, right? The Georgian Dream Party was saying, yes, we're going to get to Europe eventually, but now it seems like there is a new narrative involving a lot of anti-Western rhetoric. Why do you think this is the case, and how is it likely to change the situation?
It's not only about anti-Western rhetoric, it's also about conspiracy theories of the so-called global party of war, which nobody knows which it is, and which is trying to kind of, according to Melashvili, subdue Georgian sovereignty and identity and all the stuff that we're witnessing from this very peculiar turn of Georgian politics. They're still claiming that somehow, with all this repressive legislature and with all the repressions we're seeing now against the protesters, Georgia will become part of the European Union in 2030. But what is the most important right now is that this mask, the mask of Georgian Dream, which used to be a pro-European party, at least as they declared it, and as they were trying to sell it to the electorate and the public, is cracking, is breaking off. And if we know anything about Georgia's political history, recent one, is that openly Russian projects that are openly declaring their allegiance to Kremlin, they have a glass ceiling. They're not able to get more than 10% of the votes, and that's probably what will happen with the Georgian Dream. As soon as this pro-European mask is finally off, Georgian Dream will not be able to remain in power any longer.
Right, and who do you think will replace them? We've just heard about this United National Movement leader, for instance, being severely beaten. Who could step in?
We do not yet know who is going to step in because we will have election, and election should determine which party or coalition will be in power. However, if you're asking about my personal preference, it is definitely about coalition. It is definitely about different parties working together to ensure Georgia's European future. We've had more than enough locomotive political projects when one single party was being voted and used to get majority or vast majority of power, both in parliament and beyond it. And eventually, most of them did not end really well. So our hope, and my personal hope as a citizen of Georgia and as a patriot of my country, is that we shall see a coalition government which will be able to ensure that the will of Georgian people, the will to join Europe, to join the transatlantic alliances, will be ensured and secured for the long perspective.
We very much hope that Georgia will be able to achieve that. Thank you, sir, for being with us this evening.
Thank you.